Let me start by saying that this is January 10th and I am making a posting. In the last few days there have been numerous trolls, negativity, naysayers, especially with regard to an awful lot of the alt news and the alt approaches, and most particularly about the so-called Q postings and what one might believe or not believe about it. I noticed that Jordan Sather made a comment about it, and I suppose that it directly impacted him. For the past 3 months or so, this energy called Q, whatever it is, whoever it is, posted on 4chan and then on 8chan and now on its own board with Storm. There's been growing interest in its contents, and the contents of it have particularly related to a variety of things which are of interest to those of us who see ourselves as patriots on these interests and issues, and as needing to have something other than the mainstream approach to the way the world operates, including draining the swamp, restoring our secret agencies and others, taking down the worldwide corruption, stopping sex trafficking, slavery, pedophilia, uncovering the underlying sources of power and corruption and neutralizing them. Yesterday, as part of what I see as that negativity, there was a posting from the channel Dark Journalist, excuse me, and I will post a link to that. And it related to a discussion between Dan or Daniel, the so-called dark journalist, and a guy named Dr. Joseph Farrell, who apparently has some expertise in these kinds of things. And they were both pretty critical about the whole process of Q. I think Dr. Farrell, in fairness, said, well, look, I won't discount it entirely. There are things in it that are of interest, but I'm pretty skeptical. I think the characterization of the channel owner was much more negative, and basically that it was all disinformation, that it was part of a mainstream corporate disinformation process, that they look to have those of us who might put some credence in it as being distracted. They quoted Catherine Austin Fitts as this Q business providing hope porn, and that it is prefab, it is messianic following of Trump, it is a team of people, not one person, that it is probably dangerous, that it could be AI, it could be neuralistic programming, it could be Russians or Chinese. There was a lot of skepticism, and there was a comment even that only a dunce would make these kind of grammatical errors, the kind of grammatical errors that are on it. They saw it as a big Christmas present, as hope porn, that it was going to satisfy and placate the pro-Trump crowd, the evangelical crowd, and the pedo, go after the pedo crowd. They characterized it as similar to some of the other disinformation and fake sources, including Fulford. You know, I suppose we can go, as Maya side, we can take all kinds of crazy stuff that is fake and say, yeah, sure, it could be. They called it a fabricated version of WikiLeaks, Ed Snowden, Delphi, and that the people, many of us who look to it, are sitting around waiting like Pavlov's dogs, salivating for the bell to ring so that we can see more of it. And finally, not to give too much to it, but it is very, very dangerous material. And Daniel, the channel owner, called it, the vibe of it was totally fake. He's not following the white rabbit. He's not taking the bait. He's not that stupid. And really good researchers will not buy it. So I will post that so that you can at least see what's there. I think it's fair to take a look at it. But I will also post a posting that includes Jerome Corsi, who is not one to be laughed at. I think he could be fairly called a really good researcher, and he's one who gives credence to it. He's also one that has been interviewed on InfoWars and has brought it to what one would call, I guess, the mainstream of the alt media. So my thoughts about this were not simply whether it's positive or negative. Would I say that this is necessarily true? No, not necessarily. Would I bet my life on the postings of Q or on the admonitions or the assertions that everything was going great and that we should just sit back and watch and eat our popcorn? No, I don't. So on the more positive side of this, the comments that are made by Q are the things that we want to hear, whether they are disinformation or not, whether it's just a distraction to take us into a different place. The truth of the matter is, it seems to me, that there are predictions that have been made on Q that have proven to be true. There is energy and movement that seems to parallel what Q says, and there are postings by Q and on Trump's tweets that seem to 5 minutes one way or the other match and parallel and serve as bookends to the comments that are being made. So as Gibbs says on NCIS, there are no coincidences, and I believe it, and I believe that. So we should be careful, skeptical, discerning, and not bet our lives on what this is going on. And on the other hand, as was pointed out by the dark journalist folks, we need to not be passive. What I have seen, both in the positive side of these kinds of responses and throughout the Trump presidency, and on the negative side, is that everybody sits around and says, hoo-hoo, yes, or hoo-hoo, no, and they don't do anything. And it is this whole electronic media business has served to pacify people and let them sit and watch, sit and agree, sit and disagree, sit and play. And I think it's probably time for us to move on. So whether the Q postings are simply pabulum for us to suck up, or Huxley Soma to take us away, the question is then, I guess, can we make it backfire? If they're speaking our tune, even if they think that they are fooling us, can we make it backfire? And I think we can. So it's time to do something. It's time to move forward. Since the inception of this country, there has been a dark side. There's no question about it. Even our national seal shows the Pentagon, shows the all-seeing eye, says the New World Order. They've been planning this. They, whoever they are, have been planning this for 250 years. And with each generation, with each presidency, with each term, we've kicked the can down a little farther. We've taken all this stuff seriously. We've watched the false flags. We've watched the huge events. We've watched what has gone on. Most of us took it seriously. Most of us believed it, and we just let it go. So now, for the first time ever, we have the internet. And there are millions of us that are tuning in. There are millions of us paying attention. There are millions of us who get it. And we can either get it and do nothing, or we can get it and do something. So George W. Bush could not properly quote the "fool me once" saying, but the truth of the matter is that for generations we have been fooled and fooled and fooled over and over again. So the question then is, are we ready not to be fooled anymore? Is Trump with us? Maybe. Is Q with us? Maybe. Does it make any difference? If Trump is with us, and that's great, then let's encourage it. Let's be a positive influence. Let's move it forward. Let's hold their feet to the fire. Let's let them know we're behind them. But we're going to have to do that in something other than sitting in our rooms watching the internet and playing with our cell phones. If they're not with us, does that make any difference? We still should move forward, and we may not have much time, because the internet is there for better and or worse. The internet is there for better, informing us all. The internet is there for worse, controlling us all. and it will turn one way or the other soon enough. When is soon enough? 2 years, 5 years, whatever. When they turn it off, we're in trouble. When they play with this, we're in trouble. When they censor it, we're in trouble. When they pull false flags, they will put us at risk. And if the sheeple lead, we'll all go over the cliff like the lemmings, to mix the metaphor. If the sheeple don't lead, if some of us will come forward and take interest in seeing that there is an organization that alternates, then we have a chance. There is this recognition that Soros dumped $18 billion into his so-called smart and liberal causes, and people made note of it. But here's the deal: Hillary Clinton spent billions trying to get elected, and Trump didn't, and Trump won. And so, just as is true with the 2016 election, we can step forward. We can do this without money. We can take advantage of this. If we connect, we unite, we engage, we speak out, we prepare, and we're willing to take a stand. And if there are enough taking a stand, it's like stacking matchsticks. If there's one stick there, it breaks. If there are 10 million of us there, it turns into a powerful force. In a previous posting, I have said, hey, look, I have this idea. It may not be the best idea. It's just my way of throwing something into the pile. But I call it Unite the 10 Million. And I put on the top of it, Reclaiming Our Country. And in it, I believe that we can reclaim our country. I would ask that, at least as a concept, we give consideration to being that group that has united the 10 million. And in that process, pulling in our police, our fire departments, our military, our National Guard, our reserve, our citizens, our elected officials at all kinds of levels, citizens who are willing to step forward, and people like InfoWars and others that are posting the Hagman Report and lots of others. And by doing it, whatever we call it, by doing it, letting them know that if they pull a false flag, if they shut down the banks, if they shut down the internet, if they shut down electricity, if they stop oil production or don't distribute gasoline, if the grocery stores go empty, we're not going to panic. We're not going to react. We're not going to let them come up with a solution that we do not, that does not accord with maintaining our freedom and in expanding it. So Catherine Austin Fitts and these guys that quoted her, whether she meant to put it in this context or not, talk about the comments that we've had over the past several months as hope porn. All right, so it is. But let me point out that the Declaration of Independence was hope porn, that the Federalist Papers were hope porn, that these brave guys stepped forward and said, you know, we have this idea, we have this vision, we see something that has never been, and we see that it can be. And they stepped forward. They stepped forward as the 3%. There were 3% or so active at any given time, even though a third of the population probably backed them. And that's how I came up with the 10 million. 10 million is 3% of 329 million people, give or take a few thousand. So if the 10 million of us step forward, we can make a difference. We can make a change. We can take our country back, and we can re-engage the process. So no matter whether there are false flags or doom and gloom in our future, if we're organized, it will not take us down. My suggestion is unite the 10 million, make the patriots ring, hold our public officials to account, make them declare that yes, in fact, they know there are false flags, and if they don't, let's unelect them, or let's not elect them at all. Let's do it. So what I would like to point, I played with this last night, and I'm going to share it even though it is obviously premature to do so. We have a preamble to our Constitution, and I looked at it the other night and said, you know, it is becoming not true anymore. And so I have a preamble for the 10 million, and it reads as this. We the people, rightful grantees of a great nation, the United States of America, in order to reclaim our imperiled union, hereby join in common cause to reestablish justice, restore domestic and tranquility, strengthen our common defense, fortify our borders, invigorate our shared welfare, and recapture the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We do hereby pledge to defend our Constitution and these United States of America. And I think that is both and can be a preamble to the revisionist look that we have at this, and also a charge to the troops to proceed in some fashion. Just a draft, but I think it's time for us to do something positive and not simply sit and watch and complain. So I would ask you to like this posting. Obviously, like everybody else, the algorithm works for me. If you like it, I would like to have you share it with other people, if you will. If you think anybody will listen to this, great. If you have people that are on the edge, great. If you have people that are negative, fine, let's do it. I would like to have you share your comments and input with me. If you have different ideas, that's great as well. If you'll subscribe, I'll keep in touch. I have much more to say. And click the bell to be aware of when I do so. Thank you very much.